Today, we're going to be in the book of Ruth. If you want to open up in your Bibles to the book of Ruth. If you don't have one, there might be one in the chair underneath in front of you. And the book of Ruth might be a hard one to find. It's only 4 chapters. It's right after the book of Judges, right before the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel. It's on page 230, okay, in case you're wondering. In fact, I think if you do have the little hardback Bible underneath the chair, it is on page 230. And so you can join me there. Every great love story has a great backstory. Every great love story has a great backstory. If I were to tell you the love story between Aaron and I, it began like this. One day I walked into the room and I saw this beautiful woman. And so I walked up to her and I said, "I love you." And she looked back deep into my eyes and she responded, "I love you." And I said, "Let's spend the rest of our lives together." Next day, we got married and lived happily ever after. Don't you know that's not a great love story, is it? No, that's a lame love story. All right, that's not the way love stories go. It's not the dream, probably the nightmare that we might have. Love stories, great love stories, have challenges that need to be overcome. There's trust that needs to be developed. There's risk that needs to be made. There's this dance and pursuit of one another. One kind of draws in a little bit closer, and the other one kind of wigs out and draws back a little bit. And so that one says, "Oh no, I've rushed it too far. Let me pull back the other way." And then the other one starts to pursue the other direction. And there's kind of this tug and pull and dance and beauty of the pursuit of one another as both of them are trying to come to the place of, am I willing to risk it all? Am I willing to give my heart over to this person? Every great love story has a great backstory, and I think that's why Romeo and Juliet is the classic love story, the greatest love story that continues to be told. Why? Because you have these two crazy individuals who are madly in love with one another, but the obstacle is their families are feuding. Their families hate one another, and so it's a love story that continues to be told. It's a love story that includes tragedy. And sometimes the greatest love stories do include those tragedies. Today in the book of Ruth, we're going to read a great love story. It's a story that is filled with tragedy, a story that's filled with risk, a story filled with commitment, a story that's filled with this dance and pursuit of one another, a story of surrender and yielding the heart to another person. It's a beautiful love story. We can't read all the details. It is 4 chapters, and I hope that today you would just get a taste of this love story, and you would jump in even throughout this week and read the entire love story. But let me give you the spoiler alert, okay? If you don't like the spoiler, close your ears. Spoiler alert. It's not just a story about Ruth and Boaz. This is a story that is included in Scripture for all of humanity, for every reader across time and space to know and see the greater love story of God. We're going to see a picture today of God's infinite and unconditional pursuit of us. And so let's jump in the book of Ruth, chapter 1. Verse 1, the scripture says, "During the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons." I think I'm reading this wrong. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah, and they entered the fields of Moab and settled there. The author of Ruth gives us a few introductory verses, really kind of sets the scene, the stage, the background of when and where this story takes place. Notice the time frame. It says during the time of the judges. Ruth takes place, is included in the Bible right after the book of Judges. Here's the thing we all need to know about Judges. This was not a good time in the history of Israel. This was not the shining moment. In fact, the book of Judges can be summarized at the very end when it says, everyone did what was right in their own eyes. If everyone decided to do what was right in their own eyes, what would you have? You'd have chaos. You would have madness. It's as if we know from experience, right? You would have madness, right? You would have chaos. And so the nation of Israel, after Joshua, the commander who brought them into the promised land, we talked about him a few weeks ago, they settle the land. Before they ask for a king, King Saul and King David, they're coming. This 400-year time period, there was a cycle going on in the life of Israel. They would fall into sin. They would fall into sin. They would walk away from God. God would remove his hand of blessing. When God removes his hand of blessing, what comes in? Destruction, famine, pestilence, war, disease, like all these things. Now, the people would recognize that this is from the hand of God, so they would turn from their sins. They would return to God, and God would raise up a leader. That leader is called a judge, a deliverer to rescue the people, and everything would go well for a season until the people decided to fall into that routine all over again. This was a generational cycle, not the brightest moment in the history of Israel, and that's where this story takes place. And I love this because out of 400 years, you have a lot of people, you have a lot of families, and you have a lot of stories. But God allows for us to get a glimpse at this story of this family. Why? Because it's going to reveal something about who God is. And it's a powerful picture that we get to lean into today. Not only was it during the time frame of the Judges, there was a famine in the land. So during this cycle, this is kind of part of the cycle. It's the low point, okay? They're experiencing the judgment of God. There's a famine in the land. This story takes place in a city called Bethlehem. Let me rephrase. It starts in a city called Bethlehem. Bethlehem means house of bread. House of bread. Funny thing is, there's no bread in the house of bread, okay? Just imagine, you're going to have to imagine really hard on this one, all right? Imagine you went to Waffle House, okay? Some of you are like, I can't even begin to imagine, all right? Let's imagine you're going to Waffle House and you go in and they say, we got no waffles, all right? The house of bread is experiencing a famine. There is no bread. You and I have experienced hunger, and sometimes we've said, I'm hungry, but we have no idea what this family is walking through. For us, I'm hungry means I haven't eaten in 5 hours. I skipped lunch. I'm starving, right? But for them, there is desperation. Where are we going to get food to feed our family? So Elimelech makes a hard decision. I don't think he made this decision lightly or easily, but he packs up his family. He leaves their home in Bethlehem. They head east, back across the Jordan River to the other side, to the land of Moab. Let me just say about Moab, it's not the place you want to raise your kids, right? Moab was a godless place. It was a pagan place, idol worship. Sexual immorality was rampant in the land of Moab. A lot of whispering about, did you hear what happened in Moab? A lot of that, like it was not the place you wanted to raise your family. But Elimelech, who, by the way, his name means, my God is king. Beautiful picture. During the time of Judges, Israel has no king but God. And here Elimelech, my God is king, is married to a woman named Naomi. Naomi's name means pleasant. Don't you just like the couple already? They represent so much good, so much God. My God is king, is married to pleasant. Their first son is named Mahlon. We name kids because we like the way it sounds. They named kids because of the meaning. Mahlon means sickness. And I just wonder if there was some sort of sickness going around town, maybe a spiritual sickness, so they named their child Sickness. Their second child, Kilion, their second son, his name means pining or longing. It means tired, all right? Here's the deal. They have 2 kids named Sick and Tired. I don't know where the phrase originated, but it has to be this. Don't you agree? So Elimelech makes a tough call. There's no bread in the house of bread. So he says, Naomi, let's go. Sick and tired. Hop in the minivan. We got to get to where the food is. All right. So this little family makes the trip over to Moab, and they settle there. Naomi's husband, verse 3, Naomi's husband Elimelech died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Her sons took Moabite women as their wives. Again, not something that was probably in the plan as they were dreaming about their future wives for their sons. One was named Orpah. She went on to start her own talk show later on, became really famous. Orpah, and the second was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both sick and tired, also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 children and without her husband. We just read 2 more verses. We glossed over it pretty quickly. 10 years has passed, but so much has happened. Can you imagine that you're Naomi just for a minute? And for some in the room, you don't have to imagine because you've walked that journey. You've lost your spouse. You know the heartache. We read it. Her husband died. You feel it. There was a time of desolation when they were in Bethlehem, and now Naomi's experiencing desperation. That's despair. She has lost not just her husband, she's lost her home. She's lost her way of life. She's lost her friendships. She lost her normal routine. You know, there goes Tuesday night bunco with all of my lady friends and all the stuff of life in Bethlehem. It's gone. She gets to Moab, this place that she does not imagine. Like, it's not, think about it. Like, as parent, you got the picture perfect kind of vision for your family. It's not going the way Naomi wants. She gets to Moab, pagan, godless, immoral area, and her husband dies. Wow. And then over that 10 years, the Bible just throws out, and now she's lost her 2 sons. Do you feel her pain and her loss just for a moment? What would you do? Well, how does she respond? If you look at verse 6, she and her daughters-in-law set out to return from the territory of Moab because she heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's need by providing them food. Naomi catches wind in Moab. There's now food in Bethlehem. That cycle is taking a corner. Most likely the people are repenting. They're returning to God. She wants nothing more than just to get back to the way things were. I got to get back home. Now, her 2 daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, they start to tag along with her. That's the duty they have to their mother-in-law. If you go read it a little bit later, Naomi starts to convince them. She starts to give them, look, here's some reasons, some really good reasons, by the way, why you should not come with me. The custom was that if you lost your husband, the brother would kind of take up the reins. Your unmarried brother would take up the reins and have a child, marry you, have a child to preserve that family name of the lost, belated brother. And so she's beginning to counsel them, hey, go back, look at verse 14. Again, they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law. All right, she's saying goodbye. She's going to return home. She's taking Naomi up on her word. Hey, you're right. Like, I want to go back to what I know. I want to go back to Moab. I'm going to try to begin a new life with my people. But notice it says, but Ruth clung to her. And all of this is setting the stage for the beautiful love story. Ruth clung to her. Church, that's incredible. The word cling here is also the word that's used to describe the marriage relationship in the opening chapters of Genesis. This is the reason a man would leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the 2 become one. What Ruth does is not any means like a marriage, but she is making a commitment. She is making a vow to Naomi. I'm sticking with you. And Naomi is still trying to convince her. Verse 15, Naomi, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods, little g, follow your sister-in-law. And notice how Ruth responds. Verse 16, but Ruth replied, don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. And may the Lord punish me and do so severely if anything but death separates you and me. This is a powerful commitment from Ruth. And please understand, she's not just looking for a change of address. She's experiencing a change of heart. This is not location change, okay? This is life change. Ruth is not thinking, you know what? I've heard the bread in Bethlehem is really good. I think I'll go. I'll stay in a little Airbnb, kind of test the waters a little bit and see if it's for me, and I'll make a decision then. No, she's making the decision, I'm leaving Moab. I'm leaving it all behind. And Naomi, like it or not, I'm right here with you. Wherever you go, I'm going to go. Wherever you stay, that's where I'm going to stay. Your people are going to be my people. In fact, wherever you die, that's where I'm going to die. In fact, but here's the kicker. Your God will be my God. You see what Ruth is doing? This is extraordinary faith. It is extraordinary faith as she is clinging to Naomi and leaving it all behind. And I just have to wonder, this is Andy here, but I just have to wonder, what is it that Ruth saw in Naomi? As Naomi is experiencing the relentless pursuit of tragedy in her life, Ruth sees something. Now, in Moab, she sees it from a distance, right? She kind of hears about the God of Israel, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and she's seeing, Elimelech and Naomi and all these things, but there's something about Naomi as she has walked through tragedy that is attractive to Ruth, that Ruth says, I want that. I don't know what you have, and I don't fully understand it, but I'm willing to abandon the gods of Moab in pursuit of your God. And if I could pause and just give a quick point of application, here it is. Our response to tragedy is the true test of our trust in God. Our response to tragedy is the true test of our trust in God. In a lot of ways, Naomi is like the female version of Job. If I were to ask you, anybody want to live like Job? Guess what? We're not raising our hand on that one. Like, we've seen what this guy has lost. And if I were to ask, anybody want to live the life of Naomi? It's like, sure, but can I bypass like all the loss? I'm so thankful, though, that the Bible includes stories of Naomi and stories of Job. Because what it reminds us of is, man, that walking with God is not the absence of tragedy. But walking with God is the presence of our Creator and our Father in the midst of tragedy. I'm so thankful that for the stories of God parting the Red Seas and the miracles that take place, and that is inspiring. We long to see God move, but I'm also so thankful that in the midst of tragedy, God shows up. God shows up in powerful ways. In fact, you may be asking here, like, Andy, where's God in this? Where's God in Ruth chapter 1? All I read is loss after loss after loss. Listen, Naomi has lost it all. And Ruth has left it all. And so where's God? Let me show you. Verse 22. So Naomi came back from the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law Ruth, the Moabitess, and they arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So let's ask the question, hey, where is God in this story? Where is God in the relentless pursuit of the tragedy? He's right here. Did you see it? They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. The author of Ruth is not just including useless details here. This specific detail is to cue us in that this is perfect timing. They don't arrive in Bethlehem at the end of the barley harvest. They arrive at the beginning of the barley harvest. And so what this is going to introduce is this man named Boaz. Boaz is a prominent man, and Boaz is of noble character. And you're thinking, Andy, how do you know that? Look in chapter 2, verse 1. Now, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side. He was a prominent man of noble character from Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz. Now we see, in the midst of tragedy, the relentless pursuit of tragedy, Boaz shows up. Boaz shows up. Boaz is the hero of this story. Boaz is going to pursue Ruth, and Ruth is going to pursue Boaz, and we're going to see this beautiful love story being woven together. But let me talk to all the guys just for a second. We read about Boaz, and we're about to read more about some things that he does, and he's the hero. And listen, guys, we want to be the hero, don't we? We want to be the one that swoops in and gets the girl and saves the day and rescues and kind of resolves all the conflict and the tragedy and the trials. But in this story, just listen, guys, we're not Boaz. We're not Boaz. We're more like Ruth, okay? And so we just have to deal with that, all right, and sit with that. But Boaz portrays for us a picture of Jesus Christ. So, Ruth and Naomi arrive at the beginning of the barley harvest. We're introduced to this guy named Boaz. He has fields. Ruth begins to go out and glean. And this would have been customary. People would glean the fields, the workers for the landowner, but there would always be some excess off on the side. So Ruth would come along, people in need would come along, and they would just pick up the excess for themselves. And this is how they would live. Boaz shows up, and here's what happens. He takes notice of Ruth. Turn to your neighbor and say, he took notice. He took notice. He took notice of Ruth. He says, hey, servants, he pulls up in his F-150. He steps out, he's like, hey, guys, how's things going? We got the checklist. We need any more tractors? How's the farm doing? How's the barley? What's the weight? All the things. Hey, who's that? Who's that over there? Like, that's Ruth. That's Ruth, the Moabitess. What are they saying? She's from over there. She's got a past. She's got the pagan background, the idolatry background. She's the one who has clung to Naomi. And I want you to see Boaz's response to Ruth in verse 8. Boaz said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, don't go and gather grain in another field. Don't leave this one, but stay here close to my female servants. See which field they are harvesting and follow them. Haven't I ordered the young men not to touch you? When you're thirsty, go and drink from the jars the young men have filled. What's Boaz doing? He's protecting her. He's providing for her. Notice her response. She fell face down, bowed to the ground, like she can't believe it. Ruth has never experienced this magnitude of kindness. She knows her past. She knows the conflict between the Jews, the Israelites, and the outsiders, the foreigners. She fell face down. She bowed to the ground and she said, why have I found favor with you so that you would notice me, although I am a foreigner? Essentially, she's saying, what have I done to deserve this kindness? You know what the answer to the question is? Nothing. Ruth, listen, church. Don't miss this. Ruth has done nothing to deserve the kindness, the protection, the provision of Boaz. But what do we see? He's found favor with her. He's found favor with her. And he says, don't go glean in anybody else's field. Hey, my fields are plenty for you. So, next day comes, where does Ruth go? She goes to Boaz's field. I'm going to make up some dialogue here, but she's having a conversation with Naomi. Where are you going today, Ruth? Well, I thought I'd go glean from Boaz's field. Okay, the next day, where are you going today, Ruth? I thought I'd go to glean in Boaz's field. Pretty soon, Naomi is picking up on this. She's spending a lot of time in Boaz's field. What's going on here? So she brings Ruth in and consults with her. Chapter 3, verse 3. Again, you're going to read the details later. There's a beautiful story that I'm skipping over. But verse 3, Naomi tells Ruth this, wash, put on perfumed oil, and wear your best clothes. She gets what's going on. She sees the love story brewing, and she says, Ruth, take a bath. Get cleaned up. You've been working hard, right? You've been sweating. All right, there's a time for that. There's a season for that. Let's get showered, put on some essential oils. Let's get the fragrance growing. How about some makeup and some lipstick? Get your hair all dewed up. Don't put on your nightgown, okay? Put on your best clothes because you're about to go present yourself to Boaz. She says, go down to the threshing floor, but don't let the man know you're there until he has finished eating and drinking. Naomi is so smart. She's so wise. Like, she knows. Like, don't catch him while he's hangry, okay? Let the meal settle in. Let him get in a good mood. Let him drink a little bit. And then go. And here's what you're to do. When he lies down, notice the place where he's lying. Go in and uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will explain to you what you should do. All right, let's just put it on the table. That's weird. That's just weird. All right, again, God does not record useless details for us. There's a point here. And Ruth does it, right? Not in an inappropriate way. Listen, don't read any inappropriateness into this story. This is a beautiful love story. She goes in, uncovers his feet, and lies down. What would you do? I'd be startled. I'd be startled. What does Boaz do? Verse 10. Verse 9. Verse 8. Here we are. Here we go. Verse 8. At midnight, Boaz was startled. He turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. So he asked, who are you? I could think of 10 other questions I'd probably be asking. Who are you? I am Ruth, your servant. She replied, take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer. This is huge, church. This is huge. What is she doing at his feet? She's taking on a posture of humility. She's taking on a posture of, I am unworthy. I have no grounds to make this request. You with me, church? I have no grounds to make this request. I'm just your servant. Take me under your wing. Because you're a family redeemer. And again, God outlines in the Old Testament law provision that if a woman lost her husband, it was the brother, the unmarried brother's responsibility, and then it was like the unmarried uncle's responsibility. God is looking after his people. And she says, you're in line. You're a family redeemer. Boaz then goes and basically tells her, hey, there's one more in front of me. I'm not actually the next in line. I'm the next in line, and so we got to take care of business first. So he goes to the other guy and says, hey, there's this land that from Elimelech's family. Elimelech's gone, and their sons are gone, and do you wish to redeem it? And he says, sure, I'll redeem it. And then Boaz says, cool, redeem it. It comes with a Ruth. And he says, never mind, change my mind. No thanks. I don't need a Ruth. I don't, it's going to mess up our family inheritance and all those other things. And so you redeem it. And so what does Boaz do? He goes and he buys the field and he redeems Ruth. He purchases her. They marry. Now here's the rest of the story. It's too hard not to pass by. Boaz and Ruth have a son named Obed. Obed gets married and has a son named Jesse. Jesse, his wife, have a son named David. King David. We sang a song earlier that included this lyric. We were the beggars, but now we're royalty. Ruth, the Moabitess, the woman with the past. Through famine and through tragedy and through trial, Naomi makes her way into Moab and through a series of extremely unfortunate circumstances that all of us would say, no thanks, I don't want that to be my story. God uses that to reach Ruth and bring her to Bethlehem and introduce her to Boaz, and she becomes a part of the royal line of Jesus Christ. Isn't that incredible? And it's the story of you and me. we're the beggars. We're the foreigners. We're the ones who are born enslaved by sin, deserving to die, and we stand before Jesus at his feet with nothing to offer, but everything to gain. We have nothing to offer. And so we come to his feet with a simple request. Jesus, please take us under your wing. And you know what he does? He redeems us. Let me summarize the love story between Ruth and Boaz with 3 statements. Number 1, Ruth found favor in the eyes of Boaz. She has nothing to offer, but she has found favor with him. Number 2, Boaz was motivated by his love for Ruth. Nobody's twisting Boaz's arm saying, you know, Boaz, here's what you need to do. Boaz is not even next in line. He's the next in line. This is somebody else's responsibility. So he's not operating by law. He's operating by love. Thirdly, Boaz paid the price to purchase the field and redeem Ruth. He was willing to pay the price. And what we see in these 3 statements is a picture of us, for us, of the greatest love story, the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. Did you know that you have found favor in the eyes of Jesus? For some of you, you agree with that, but you're not sure you fully believe it. For some of you, you know that, and you hope that it would be true, or you think it's true for everybody else, but it's not true for you. You think that you have not been invited to the party because of some past. Listen, you're invited to the party. And not just as a spectator, but as a participant in God's design. You have found favor with Jesus. And here's the lie of the world. The lie of the world is this. If you do good, if you cause, the effect is Jesus will look on you with favor. And if you don't do good, if you don't cause, then the effect won't happen. He won't look on you with favor. I have good news for you today. Our good works toward him, it's not the cause of his favor. It's the effect. His love toward us is the cause. God is the first cause. In the beginning, God created. He's the first cause. We love him. You know why? Because he first loved us. And that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. He's the cause. Our response is the effect of what he's done. So I want you to believe this. You found favor in the eyes of Jesus. Secondly, I want you to know that Jesus is motivated by his love for you, not by the law. No one is twisting his arm to go to the cross. He comes in a posture of surrender. He comes in a posture of humility, willing to offer his life. And in that offering, here's what Jesus did. Jesus purchases our redemption. He paid the price to redeem you and I, and that price is death. And so he shed his blood on a very real cross. This is a beautiful picture of the greatest, most supreme love story ever told, and your heart longs for it. Our soul is searching for it. And there's some of you, maybe you relate more to Orpah in the story. You quickly just return back to the way things are. You quickly return back towards sin, towards life, towards what you want. And for some of you, today God is calling you to make a decision like Ruth. To say, I'm willing to leave it all in pursuit of this royal family. If all of this is true, I want you to know this. I want you to know that all that Naomi has left, and all that Naomi has lost, and all that Ruth has left, is worth the greater value of experiencing the faithful, redemptive love of God. It's worth it. We look at the story and we think, I'm not sure I'm willing to make that trade. I'm not sure I want to go through that loss. But listen, if you go through that loss, there is a greater, far surpassing value of experiencing the faithful, redemptive love of God. And if you have to leave it all for the sake of Jesus Christ, I want you to know there's a greater surpassing value of experiencing the faithful, redemptive love of God. And here's what we all need to know about the love of God. It is faithful and redemptive. Because there's a lot of people who would love to pervert the love of God and say, well, God loves us, that means we can do whatever. No, that's not his love. His love is faithful, but his love is redemptive. If his love is faithful but not redemptive, you could always depend on him, but then you would just say, oh, I'm just going to stay the way I am. But listen, God doesn't want you to stay the way that you are. His love is redemptive. He's doing a new work in us, a restorative work in us. But his work is not just redemptive. His love is also faithful. If it was redemptive but not faithful, we'd wake up every single day wondering, is his love redemptive today? And I want you to know that through loss and through leaving, you can experience the depth of his love, his faithful, redemptive love. I want to invite you to just bow your heads and close your eyes at this time and enter into a moment of prayer. Hey, what's God saying to you? Maybe for application purposes, is there a Moab in your life? Is there a distance from God that you've been running toward, gravitating toward? And today, like Ruth, you need to make the decision, extraordinary faith, to put your life in the hands of a loving Father, a Father who provides a Boaz at just the right time. Life is not found in Moab. Life is found in nearness to God, nearness to our Father. And so, God, we ask right now you'd speak to our hearts. If there's someone here that God's moving and you need to put your faith in Jesus, maybe you would echo this prayer. God, today I recognize I am separated from you. And there's no way that I could return into your presence. But God, you sent someone, not just someone, you sent your Son, Jesus, motivated by love, dying on a cross, going to the grave, defeating death, sin, through the power of his resurrection. And so today, through faith in Jesus, God, resurrect my life. God, fill the void. The search is over. You're what I need. If it means losing it all, you're worth it. And if it means leaving it all, you're worth it. To know the surpassing greatness and depth of your love. Oh, we were made for this. The powerful name of your Son, Jesus Christ. And everyone said, amen. As we stand together, as we sing, let this song, let's join saints and angels and declare that he is worthy of it all.